what happened gives me fear going forward. However, like you said, that is one data point over the first portion of this season. Nebraska still has a conference game, and then they still have to go to Hawaii. There are still multiple data points before we get to the end of this calendar year. Mm-hmm. So I'm still majority positive that this team is going to make the NCAA tournament. However, what we saw in East Lansing gives me pause, gives me more than 2 points, gives me more than 20% worth of a drop in my confidence rating.
All right.
So I'm still more positive than you on getting to the NCAA tournament, but right now I have more concern over this being something that can derail the season, that can become a habit for this team than you do.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I want to ask you this question because you started asking this question rhetorically. Well, not even rhetorically. You're actually asking it, but I want to delve down further into it. You asked, what does this team do well, Nebraska, going into this game? And you were kind of setting up the way that you were talking about Michigan State. But let's go back to that question. Like, now that we are this far into the season and 2 weeks away from going exclusively to non-con games, or 2.5 weeks away from going, or excuse me, 2.5 weeks from going exclusively to conference games, what is, taken as a whole, where we've gone in the first month and a half of a season, what would you still say this team does well? What's its strength when you're looking at them as a matchup right now?
Defense and getting to the free throw line.
Okay.
That's really the strength. There's still potential strengths, things that have kind of shown themselves a little bit, and that's the ability to shoot the basketball. It's not something that Nebraska has shown they can depend on. But when you get Connor Essegian hot from deep, and then you get a few other guys hitting, and Nebraska had that couple game stretch where it was like, wow, this could be a thing. It just doesn't show itself enough. Nebraska's shooting under 30% from deep on the season. But defensively, other than in East Lansing, Nebraska has shown through scheme and through effort and through size, this team can be very hard to score on. And on the other end, Nebraska not necessarily hitting shots, but finding a way. That's the effort part of it that you saw. So I think, East Lansing aside, this team can still be counted on. The strength of this team is what they're going to do defensively, and then the effort in finding a way on offense, whether or not shots are going in.
And I mean, I you know what I would have thrown in there too, and it's going to sound funny, is rebounding too.
Yeah. Well, and rebounding is an effort thing.
Right. But I would have added that in there as a pretty, just not giving teams second opportunities for the most part. And I think that's probably, if you looked at the statistical rankings, even after the Michigan State game, that probably is where they're ranked highest in stats like rebound margin or some of those advanced metrics that they've got with this whole thing. Well, and so
Nebraska went from out rebounding its opponents on the year by like 8 per game.
Yeah.
It's down to 1 per game.
Okay. So it drops. Wow. That's crazy. It was that bad. And so then the next question that follows from the first question that I asked is, if that is still their strength, what kind of matchups, what are the matchups that are going to be good ones for Nebraska, and what are going to be bad ones for Nebraska? And the bad ones are, I guess, whatever Michigan State is. And the good ones are whatever Creighton is. I don't know.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah. I don't it's obviously, if they're going to have a team that is big, like their size advantages help them in their early season quite a bit. Like that's been pretty significant for them in the games that they've won. And so when you have teams come in like Michigan State did, that had several bigs that matched up, and Nebraska, had Berke that was kind of not really playing, and that was factored into that too.
Less than 14 minutes, by the way.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Away from their size too.
Do you feel like that game, because it snowballed in the second half, could have gone a different direction if instead of Andrew Morgan getting 28 minutes and Berkay under 14, if you flipped those minutes, it feels a lot better the way things go in the second half. And Berkay obviously has to be healthy to get those minutes.
Maybe, but like, Morgan was one of the guys who was making shots in that game.
The team high 14 points.
He was inefficient. I agree. He was inefficient, but he was one of the few people who was making shots or rebounding the basketball. So it's hard to rip him too much.
Right.
Like, I was watching the game with my son, and he was being critical of Morgan during the game. And I'm like, at times he looks like the only one who's playing though. Right. So I don't know how much of a difference that would have really made.
Okay.
I really don't. Because he was the one who was the only one who was giving. Kaleb, there were other people who were doing nothing that should have been out. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, typically what you've seen over the first portion of the season is reversing those minutes numbers.
Yes.
Is that Berkay was out there for the 25.
I'm just saying, I don't know that doesn't feel to me like it would have made a difference in this game.